Hey guys. Hello, hello. Welcome to our TokiTV, our Sunday gathering for Sk'aliCh'elh-tenaut's legacy. Thank you all for being with us. I'm going to go around and just do some, let me take my little banner off. Go around, do some quick check-ins. And Deb Cruz and I are competing with the same button. Let's go around and say hello. And then we'll introduce you guys to our special guest today. So Casey and Stephanie, how are you?
We are fabulous. So it's a beautiful fall day here in the land of 10,000 lakes. So we're happy to be here, but it's beautiful outside too.
Yay, Deb Cruz. Talkative Deb Cruz. Christina, how are you?
I'm awesome. I'm excited to hear about what Antonio has to say today. It's exciting. Woo!
Very, very blessed to have Antonio with us today. Deborah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Like Christina, I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Antonio, to hear what we don't know. Thank you for being here.
Ma, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I hope everybody else is. Thanks for joining us, and thanks, Antonio. I'm really looking forward to hear what you say about your experiences with Toki. Those people that you mentioned before getting kicked out of the arena was probably me. I was one of them. So really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Awesome. And Alejandro, how are you?
I'm happy to be here, and thank you, Antonio, for joining us today and tell people your story about Toki.
Well, let me tell you guys just a little bit about Antonio and Alejandro. I just want to say thank you for putting us in touch with Antonio. Your advocacy continues on and on and on, Alejandro. Just really thank you for bringing Antonio with us today. Just in our little intro conversation the other day, Antonio was probably really trying to get off the phone with me, but I kept asking questions because he just has all this background and knowledge. And so just really happy and blessed to Alejandro just to be in this with you and the people that you bring to the table, to this group. So Antonio, I'm gonna tell you guys just a little bit about Antonio. Antonio Fens is a politics and business editor at the USA Today Florida Network and the Palm Beach Post. Antonio's 30-year journalism career includes 16 years as a business writer and opinions editor for the South Florida Sun Sentinel and Florida and Caribbean News correspondent for Business Week magazine. He also briefly served as managing editor of the McClatchy News Bureau's Washington, D.C. bureau. One of Antonio's journalism and personal passions is the environment, especially the oceans and coastal regions. For 3 years, he guided the research and conservation programs at the Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation. Antonio received his bachelor's degree in journalism and political science from the University of Miami and his Master of Arts and PhD in international history from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Antonio, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you. And thanks to Alejandro who connected us. And I was thinking back, and we were talking about earlier, one of my indelible memories was the first time I met Alejandro. And he was out there on a Sunday afternoon raising the issue. And as I said earlier, I think that the work that Alejandro did and all of you did, as much pain as you may feel right now, it is what gave people like me the opportunity to bring this issue to the forefront for a lot of other people. So while that may just be a little bit of solace, I think that you should at least feel good about the work that you all did for so many years when no one else was watching and very few others cared and many others just didn't see anything wrong in that situation. It was you guys that brought it to the forefront week after week. Alejandro was there incessantly, just never failing. And at the end of the day, you did God's work. And I think that as much as, the way this story ended was not what anybody wanted, nonetheless, there would never have been a story if you guys have not been out there raising the issue. And it's, so I think that you should at least feel good about that. And as I said earlier, I heard that really is the end of an era. but it's not the end of a cause. There's still a lot of work to be done. And let me just say a few things there, and then I'll just open up for questions. I generally, when I do these talks, I don't like to do a lot of talking. I'd rather have people ask me questions and have a conversation, because quite frankly, I learn more that way than I do just hearing myself ramble and babble. But the two things I would say is going back to that theme that this is the end of the era, but it's not the end of the cause, is, the era was the mid-century classic Florida roadside tourist attraction. The serpentarians, the monkey jungles, the parrot jungles, that really played off animals, taking animals away from their habitats to put them on display here in performance type, type settings, to basically entertain people that were coming to Florida, basically as tourists. They would go to the beach, and then they get bored of the beach, and then they want something to do. So they got horse racing and greyhound racing, and then the animal attractions. The reason that TokiTV ended up here in the first place was because by the late 60s, it was already news in Florida that Disney World was coming to Central Florida. And all of these animal attractions figured that we need to really ramp up. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to compete with Disney World. And sure enough, even before Disney World, about the same time that Disney World opened, there was a theme park in Dania Beach called Pirates World that went out of business. They were not going to be able to compete with what was coming to Central Florida. And that's how TokiTV ended up here. If not for Disney World, she probably wouldn't have been here. And the idea was, bring in this fascinating ocean animal to then do these circus tricks, splash people, and toss a trainer way up in the air, and that kind of stuff. And it was sort of these animal attractions are sort of half circus, half P.T. Barnum freak shows. Look at what a cool thing. Look what they can do. Here I am wrestling this alligator, or handling a poisonous snake that if it bites me, I'll be dead in 10 seconds. And it was kind of like that. And what the Hertzes in particular, what they saw coming was Disney World, but what they didn't see coming was the popularity of shows by people like Jacques Cousteau in the 70s and 80s. This guy named Marlon Perkins, the Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom. Then later on, Jeff Corwin and Steve Irwin, that went to show you how animals really behaved in their habitat. And that sort of put the lie to the performances they were doing, because it was like they're telling you, well, yeah, this is how orcas behave in the wild, but no, they don't. And so even though they tried to make a run by trying to keep people fascinated, in reality, people were turning away. And their argument against Disney World was, well, you can go to Disney World and see the plastic animals, or you can come here and see the real animals. Well, no, you're not really seeing the real animals because they're not in their habitat. You're creating something that is a fiction, just like, the Fantasyland is. And people saw through that. And I think that was one of the reasons why over time, it wasn't just a competition from the theme parks. It was also the reality that the public was understanding getting a better understanding of what wildlife is really about. And the proof of that is SeaWorld itself, because if that were not the case, then why is SeaWorld investing in all these roller coasters? Because they got to compete. They know that that the world is changing on them. And then the other thing is about this, and that's kind of like, the end of the era argument. The cause is an interesting one. I don't know if you guys saw this week, PBS had the American Buffalo documentary by Ken Burns, which was very moving and very poignant and inspiring. And as I watched it, I kind of saw a lot of parallels between what happened to the American buffalo and what has happened to the southern resident killer whales, and the human impact on them. And it was interesting because at one point in that documentary, there was an indigenous community leader who made the argument. He was talking about the buffalo nickel that came out at the beginning of the 20th century. That was one of the most popular coins ever. And he was drawing the contradiction that here we are, we have just slaughtered this animal into near extinction. And yet people were fascinated by the animal so much that they put it on the nickel. And the question he posed was, why do we have to kill the things we love? And the thing about the orcas is kind of a similar question as why do you have to own the thing that you love? And that was always kind of my interesting question to the Hertzes, why? Yeah, we're all fascinated by this animal, but why do you feel the need to keep the ownership? And we can get that a little bit later, but I do think the other point that was in that documentary that I'll close with this, and that is that the document does talk about how after slaughtering and hunting the buffalo to near extinction, there have been all these efforts in the past century to bring it back to numbers and to populations that are healthy and thriving. And we kind of got to that point. But again, one of the other indigenous leaders said, yes, but the thing is, if the buffalo may be alive, but if they're not free roaming, if they're not allowed to live the way they're supposed to be living, then they're not living. And you can make the same argument about the orcas in captivity, that, yeah, you're keeping them alive, but you're not letting them live. And that's kind of the challenge right now we have in terms of telling these stories. And that's where I'm going next with my audience and the story that I'm telling them and what I'm trying to explain to them. But I think that that's where I say that the cause is not over. I think that there's still a lot of efforts to be done making sure that the southern residents do not continue on a path to extinction, but also to allow the orcas who are in captivity, not just to be alive, but to live. And with that, I'll just, we can have a conversation. You guys can ask questions about whatever, but that was kind of my my little rambling preamble to all of this.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that there is a lot of, you hear that argument a lot. We're keeping them alive thanks to us. We're able to keep this species going, and I'm like, they're making hybrid animals, and animals that would normally not mate. I am curious, and we might be jumping around a little bit, but what was the response at the time from MSQ and the Hertz family? I mean, did they believe they were doing something good by holding them?
Look, here's the thing. There was always the battle over the tank. But by their own admission, they knew that it was wrong. They knew that it was inadequate. They knew that it was insufficient, because in the late 1990s, they actually even posted signs around the Seaquarium that they were going to build this new home for Lolita, or TokiTV Lolita. They were going to build a new home, a new stadium. And it was in the land that was right behind where her facility was. And then all of a sudden that disappeared. So I did press Andrew Hertz a number of times about that, what happened. And he always gave this sort of somewhat believable, somewhat not believable line about that. They had the plans. They had drawn up the plans to have her to move her to a bigger space. And then after the September 11 attacks, when you had a financial meltdown in Wall Street, that their financing fell through, and then later on they tried to resurrect it, and it didn't happen. And that's where I didn't buy it, because I was a business writer at the time, and I remember writing about how interest rates dropped. So they could have easily gotten, in the financial industry recovered very quickly after September 11th in Wall Street. And in fact, there was a fear of a recession. So the Fed immediately dropped interest rates. So there was no reason why they couldn't have gotten their financing. I just think that they saw another opportunity somewhere, and actually then Palace came in and they built where the new TokiTV facility was going to be. Palace built that big dolphin pool. And then, over the years, I did press them on, why, what was the, and there was kind of like this, there was this fascination with her. And then there was also this very paternalistic approach that, we're the only ones that really can care for her. We're the ones that know best. We're which is kind of always this it's kind of scientific arrogance that people always know better. Yeah, we know better. That we trust me. No, we know what's best for her. We have all these scientists, and we've done all this research, and it wasn't that. And part of the answer, to be honest, was off the record, and I have to honor it. And the only reason I generally don't do off the record interviews, but I really wanted the answer. So he went off the record and he explained it. I will tell you that the answer had to do with the fact that they kind of knew, but they didn't. There was also kind of this hostility in him and this anger. And I think there was some of it was, we're not going to let anybody twist our arms. We're not going to let anybody tell us what to do. And regardless of what they're doing is right or wrong. But I think deep down they knew that facility was inadequate. And I could never, Arthur Hertz, who was his father, died in, I think, 2018. So I didn't really get, after they sold to Palace, I never got a chance to talk to him. But because I was hoping that maybe I could, now that he was disconnected from the Sequorium, the ownership, and that maybe he would open up a little bit more. A colleague of mine from the late 1990s, somebody at a competing publication, but who I knew, did talk to him. There was an effort in the mid 90s to have her released. Ralph Monroe was involved in it. The governor of Washington State was involved in it. The guy, the telecom guy who sold the company for a couple $2 billion, and he was willing to finance all of this, was involved in it. And at that time, I didn't talk to Arthur Hertz at that time, but this colleague that I knew, somebody in journalism in Miami, worked for one of the Miami publications, did. And Hertz told him, these hippies want to come steal my whale. So there was always this idea of, this is my ownership. I own this animal. I bought her. She's mine, which again is kind of a strange view. Is it's almost like a clash of mindsets, between those who have this mid-century, mid-20th century view that we have domain and dominion over animals, versus, what followed, the Jacques Cousteau view of the world, that the animals, the wildlife has its own role. They are part of this global biosphere, and they should be respected as such. And that was the clash. And I think certainly for Arthur Hertz, and I don't know that Andrew Hertz completely. I think there was other stuff going on there. So I'm sorry, I kind of rambled there, but
no, that's good, because I'm we've had that with all the other parks. And so for folks watching, go ahead, and if you have questions for Antonio, go ahead and start typing those in. But we've always had that, and it's always seemed like people are out there with their fists raised, and they asking for, advocating for, screaming for release, and it's always felt that way between the industry and the advocates. Like, they're not going to tell us what to do, and no one's going to force our hand.
Yeah.
And it's just,
there was hostility. I mean, the last time I talked to Andrew Hertz, there was still deep-seated hostility, and and I pressed him, and he got angry. But I don't really care. They get angry. I'm going to ask the questions, but there was a lot of that. But there was also, he did recognize the inadequacy, and that but then I fell back to this is the way, she's been captive all these years, and what do we sent her back, what happens, that kind of rationale, which that's I've never understood either, because whether I understand or not that's indifferent. I mean, that doesn't really make sense. I do think that it's an inconsistent argument if you look at it. If you believe that something is not correct, then you should be looking at the options. And that was my question to him, and that's when he kind of got angry, and I'm not going to let these guys. And he said something that was kind of something to the extent of, we're not going to give in to free willing mentality, which I think I had him explain what that meant. And it was kind of like this romanticized that they viewed it as, there's kind of like this romanticized view of that you release this animal and it, magically it reassimilates. And again, I said, yeah, but it's not that clear cut. There are other options other than trying to reintegrate her with her pods. And so he was kind of dismissive of it, but not like a guy like Robert Rose, who was just so adamant. I think with Andrew Hertz, I think that he could see degrees of difference, but I think there was also a lot of hostility.
And we talk about, Alejandro talks about caveman era, that mentality of thinking, and also the industry's way of thinking that, well, if these people don't understand, if we release them, they're gonna, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. And the lack of trying is just really frustrating. Antonio, tell us about when did you first meet her, and kind of if you could take us on your relationship, with her up until recent.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a child. It was sometime in the fall of 1970, soon after she got to the SeaWorld. She got to the Seaquarium. We went to see the show, and she was there at that time. She was paired up with Hugo, and I remember as a kid just being amazed by this orca, and I really don't have an idea what that must have been. I was a child, I was a small kid, so I had no idea what an orca was, but I was just fascinated by it. And I was, I had gone. My parents would take us to this aquarium because it was an affordable day out. So we were there before she showed up, and we would go see the dolphins and Flipper. And there was a TV show in the 1960s, the Flipper show, and it was filmed there at the aquarium. So it was really cool to see these animals, and I thought they were the coolest thing in the world. And people don't realize this, but at that time too, they would always have one of the Seaquarium porpoises at the Miami Dolphins game. And it was a pool that they had behind one of the end zones. And after the Dolphins scored a touchdown, the dolphin would do flips in the air. So there was always kind of like this connectivity of these marine mammals, all, and we would go out to the beach and you might see one out there. But then here they brought in this orca, and it was something completely different. It was amazing. It was one of the most amazing things. And before we went on the air, we were talking. I said, that over the years I wasn't, after she arrived, my parents really stopped going. In fact, I can't recall my parents ever going back to the Seaquarium after those first couple of times that we saw her early on. Certainly not after Hugo died. But I did go, when my kids were born, I would take them just because that was a way of introducing them to marine animals and marine mammals in the wild, and being able to see some of these, particularly the porpoises, up close. And we would always stick around to see the TokiTV show, and then we would always go down and watch her, and she would kind of be watching us, and we floated. And actually, that's my last image of her. I went shortly before she got sick. I did go because I just wanted to see what this show, what it was that they were telling people. This is right after, a few years after Blackfish, so I wanted to see what it was that they were telling people in this show during this presentation that was supposed to be, they claimed it would be educational. And afterwards I came down and I just stood there as long as I could, just watching her, and she was watching me. And one of the reasons actually I went, must have been early 2020, because she kind of went out of sight in the fall of 2019, literally they had stopped the show and nobody could see her. And so I kept asking, what's going on? Oh, they're doing routine maintenance. The months were past, and I thought something was up. And but then they reopened her facility, and they had put in this big screen, and they had done some other, they upgraded sort of the visual presentation with these giant screens. And that's when I went, and I remember so that's my last image of her, was her just looking at me as I was looking at her. And I got a photo, which is the last photo I ever took of her. And she was just literally sitting there watching me. And you sort of, the one thing about animals, if you look at their eyes, you could just know that there's more there than what we're taught and we're led to believe. And that's what I watched her, we were just looking at each other. And, there are other people there too. I'm sure she looked at them too, but, that's sort of my indelible image of her alive. The last image was her, just like, she must have been maybe 8 feet away from me, and just we're watching each other.
Communicating. I believe, and communicating with each other. Tamala asks, do you see meaningful progress in how the general public is thinking about these issues, specifically with animal captivity?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. Yes, I do. I see a progression. I see a change. The stumbling block is the question, okay, what do we do? And I think this is where I think people like me need to talk to more to get to the answer to that question. Is what are the options? What are the alternatives? Why do we think these alternatives could work? But I do definitely see a change. I don't know anyone who looked at that Lolita, that TokiTV facility and thought, oh yeah, that's okay. No. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, we didn't even think twice about it. So I think there has been enormous progress. I think the challenge is, okay, we don't think this is right. What do we do? And I think that's going to be, that's the missing link. Once a convincing argument with consensus is put in front of the public, and the public can grasp that and understand it, I think that's where you see the dam break on large captive animals everywhere.
Kind of the follow-up from Tamala is, how do we get around the stumbling blocks? And she's saying it seems that the politicians and the ultra wealthy are some of the barriers. Let's go ahead and jump, and we're kind of jumping all over the place, but let's go ahead and talk about that. And some of the things that Alejandro and you are working on. Let's go ahead and get into that. Talk to us about things you've seen that's been successful that can help guide Toki's law.
Well, a couple of things. I think that I'm a lot more optimistic than the question would suggest. The politicians are not monolithic. When the Greyhound Amendment went before Florida voters, it was passed, and this was back in 2018. It was a constitutional amendment to the state of Florida Constitution that would ban greyhound racing in the state. And greyhound racing was, it was a staple of a South Florida Saturday night for decades. And in one evening of voting, it was done. Never again. It was over. And in Florida, for a constitution, the way that it works in Florida is that the constitutional amendment goes before voters in a ballot item in the general election, and it has to get 60% of the vote. And that amendment, I can't remember exactly how much it got, but it wasn't a nail biter. It got well more than 60%. It's one of those races they call early in the evening because it's just the numbers are all in favor of it. And that was a political campaign behind it that had not only progressive Democrats, it also had MAGA Republicans behind it. Lara Trump, who is Donald Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law, was one of the lead spokesmen. I mean, she was out there campaigning for this. So was Matt Gaetz, who is a MAGA firebrand. So it's doable. I mean, there's no question they can do it. And we were talking about this earlier. The difficulty is what the question points to, that it's a stumbling block. And it really does look like there's a certain inertia and that nobody wants to do anything about it. But at the same time, as we were talking about earlier, I bet you there are in the state of Florida, I think it's 160, yes, it's 40 senators and 120 state representatives. Of those 160, I would venture to guess that fewer than 25 really know about the plight of TokiTV, have any idea. Well, probably had no clue, which means that what you're working with is a blank slate where you can go in and really start explaining the issue and have somebody understand it. And yeah, in Florida, it's a very conservative state, but the Republican Party, which is a supermajority party in the state, they control everything basically in state government, but it's not a monolith. I mean, yeah, there are pro-big business Republicans, but there are also these more populist Republicans. And, you see what happened with Disney. When people think this crowd that when they see that they believe that a large enterprise in this state in their way of thinking, is acting against the best interests of the state, they will take action. And I think there's plenty of people out there that you start knocking on doors, and that's the key thing. If you take away nothing else from this conversation, I mean, if there's only one thing that you're going to remember from this conversation, it is that politics is a relationship business. And, all you got to do is Google where you live, find out who your state representative is and who your state senator is. And call their office is closer to you than you think it is. Talk, and no, you don't have to even talk to the actual politician. Just talk to their staff, their legislative aide, and say, listen, I live here. I have this concern. Will you sit down with me? Sure. And then you come in and don't walk in demanding anything. Just say, listen, my concern is this. Where do you guys stand? How much do you know about this? I venture to guess they have no idea. And then you can sort of walk them through why this is problematic and why it's not in the best interest of the state. And I think that at the end of the day, there's going to be an opportunity to at least give whatever legislation or whatever the push is. And I've talked to Alejandro quite a bit about, his thoughts and where he would like to go. And, whatever is decided on, I think it's going to have I think it's got a fair shot. I think it does have a fair shot because I do believe that there's enough people, don't get caught up with the party labels. And, there are enough people out there that if you explain the issue to, they're reasonable and may well say, you know what, I think so. And then look, and the fact of the matter is the 5 captive orcas that remain in Florida are at SeaWorld. SeaWorld is going in a different direction. They're bringing in big time roller coasters, and they know that the display animal future, just like at the Serpentarium and the parrot jungles and the monkey jungles, that just doesn't that's not going to attract people. People are looking for something else, and they find a lot of these circus type performances. It's just not something they're interested in.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was one of my questions.
Yep.
That I think Antonio answered one of my questions, because my question is, what are some of the challenges we face in Florida legislature? And I think you answered the question. We need to contact our representatives, to.
Yeah, and I think as we've talked about, I mean, at the end of the day here, the first you got to do is figure out, okay, what is it we want to do? And then the really important thing is whatever is decided, it's got to have a united front behind it, because the opposition will be united. The opposition is always going to be united. The issue is whatever is decided on, it's got to have, it can't be one of these, well, you know, this doesn't go far enough for me, so I'm just going to support it. And then, you know, you got to go. And sometimes you get legislation through, and it's not entirely everything you want, but at least you got that much done. And then you come back for the unfinished business. And then that will always leave, fixing the unfinished business will always leave some unfinished business. And then you come back and the people that I know that have been very successful in the legislature over decades are people that are just kind of relentless, and they will take what they can get at the moment they can get it. And then they're going to come back the next year, and then they come back the next year, and they come back the next year. And, you know, and if you don't believe that, then I just have two words for you. Property insurance lobby, actually 3 words, the property insurance lobby. I mean, these guys are in Florida, you know, they're in Tallahassee day in, day out. And you know what? Over the last 30 years, they've gotten just about everything they wanted.
Alejandro, I put you on the big screen so we can start. People want to know, right? Like Alejandro's talking about, you know, Toki's law, and everybody wants to support. People are ready to support. So I think we identified the first step, and Peggy Oki typed it in as well, like directly and politely contacting your legislators is one of the most powerful actions anyone can take. I think that direct and polite thing we need to stress, because just like other egos don't want to be demanded into doing something, I think it's important on the approach that's taken. Well, Alejandro is one of the most passionate people I know. And so I feel like, you know, Antonio, you and the history and your reach, and Alejandro's passion and his reach, you know, really can make a huge difference and get a lot of people to take action. So, you know, thank you guys for coming on and talking about it, and just tell us what to do. You know, people just want to know what to do. People are ready. You know, we make certain phone calls, write certain letters, we create campaigns. I mean, we know how to do that, and we're ready to do that. We want to support this because all of us, you know, don't want to see history continue to repeat itself for these majestic, beautiful animals. So, Alejandro, what do you need from us? What do you need? What do you want from us?
Your support when everything is ready to go ahead, you know. We will let you know when is the right moment to go ahead.
Yeah, look, and in the meantime, you know, find out who your state lawmakers are, the representative and the senator. Find out who they are and just reach out to them. Start building the relationship. Walk in and say, listen, my concern is this, but right now we're not, you know, we're still trying to, the different stakeholders are still trying to figure out what we want to do. But in the meantime, you tell me, what are you guys interested in? You, Mr. State Representative, Mr. State Senator, what are you interested in? What are the things that you're trying to do? And, you know, how can we help you? And start building that relationship. This is a really, I can't stress that enough. It's a relationship business. And it's, you know, the people that get stuff done in this state pick up a phone and they call somebody, and they call somebody that they have a relationship with, someone that they've known for some time. And they call in favors, or they offer to do something in return for, help me out over here. And that is, I think, the really critical thing is start knocking on those doors, start laying the groundwork. And eventually, and there are other people in there. I mean, I know that, for example, the Animal Legal Defense Fund, about 5 years ago in 2018, I was writing about it. They had presented legislation to require the release of the orcas at the Florida theme parks. And, you know, that kind of stalled because there was the mass shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And all of a sudden, you know, the focus just went to gun legislation in Florida. And that legislation kind of got pushed to the wayside. And then the pandemic came and everything got upset. But, you know, they're talking about bringing that back. So this is an opportunity to start in the meantime before anybody launches anything in Tallahassee. This is now the time to make the phone calls, start building the relationships. And then eventually when that legislation hits, then you're at least you know where to go, who to talk to, and start figuring out, okay, how do we win over their support?
And we are ready to do something like that, right? We had to wait a little bit. I have a meeting with the Animal Legal Defense, with PETA, and we are discussing about what's next. So we are still waiting for. So, but we are working on it. So just be ready, you know, when the time comes that we need everybody's support, we will let you know.
All right, ladies on the screen, anybody have any questions? Deborah.
It's actually for Alejandro. Sorry, Antonio.
Oh no, it's okay.
When you're meeting with these organizations with the big name, Animal Legal Defense Fund, PETA, are they like open to working together as a team, like the insurance lobby did? I'm sure that all the insurance companies all banded together. Are they willing to like work together, or are they fighting their own egos?
What I feel is like they are willing to work together. And I remember a few years ago, I think they went to the court together, even with Orca Network, Animal Legal Defense, and PETA. So yeah, they are friends. They are friends.
Good.
It's what we need now, friends, you know? No hate, no fight, peace and love. And a glass of wine.
Yeah, Alejandro's inspired because today's the Argentina election, presidential
Oh
election.
yeah. Today we win. Milei.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's out there. Yeah, he's definitely inspired. But I will tell you, I think that, you know, and I'll send you an email, Annette, after I speak to, you know, when the story comes out. But I think if you're looking for a model of how to do this, the Greyhound Amendment is the one.
Yes.
You know, where it was a very, you know, you had all the different political spectrums were represented, and everybody worked toward the same goal. And what was you know, the parimutuels, you know, they had money. You know, they're not pushovers, and they were united against it, and they just got steamrolled. So I think that's, if you're looking for you know, how do we do this? I think it's the Greyhound Amendment is the model to follow.
Awesome.
I will support the Greyhound Racing Amendment. We won, but we need the politicians on board, you know, and famous people too, just supporting this law.
Well, thank you guys. I want to check in briefly, and Antonio, you'd probably be interested in this, and Christine, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But any updates on, I mean, last week we kind of threw a lot of action items out there. You could write here, you could do this, you can watch this video, it was a lot. What's the most important thing we can continue to do, Christina, in regard to the dams, getting these dams breached?
Just what we're doing. Continue to contact our representatives. I mean, we can contact more than just President Biden, like Deb Cruz mentioned last week as well, you know, contacting our governor and our senator as well, because we wanted, I mean, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, but all of them, you know, like calling Inslee, calling Murray, and calling Biden, like all the time, and writing, because writing is more powerful and it takes longer, and they know that. So when you can sit down and write a letter, you know, it means a lot more. It's definitely more effective. So I don't know of any news at this moment. Actually, I just checked on Dam Sense this morning. So I don't think there's any news. We just need to keep up the pressure. That's what we need to do, for sure.
So for the folks who are just watching, who've maybe not been following our show and who've not been following the dams, you said you just checked in with DamSense. That's damsense.org. Is that?
Yep.
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 So that's somewhere you guys can go to see if there's been any updates. We have the link there up in the comment section. Peggy, if you don't mind, I know you put it up earlier in the comments, but if you don't mind to put the link again, just about the importance of letter writing. Christina just touched on it. And someone gets I get a bazillion emails, and at some point they just kind of become like another email, and you just skip through it or don't read it. But if I get a letter in the mail, I'm going to open it and I'm going to read it, and it does matter and it does make a difference. So taking that extra time. But again, Peggy has a whole thing on her site about letter writing. If you don't mind, if you're still watching, Peggy, if you could put that back in the comments so it didn't get buried in there. But in Toki's legacy, looking at Toki's law, for other captives, looking at her family, saving the Southern residents, it's something we can all continue to do in her name and in her honor. So I just want to put that out there because that's something we're going to talk about every week for sure is the dams. How do we support her? How do we support her family? Follow Wild Orca. That's Giles's organization, for more information on the Southern residents as well. Antonia, I know you said you've been following the Southern residents for quite some time, right?
Yes. Yeah, I go out there once a year, and I have written quite a bit about the plight of her family in the 3 pods, J, K, and L. And particularly when it comes to, which has been one of the key factors, is reducing the boat noise in the waters, quieting the waters. It's been I've written and watched the whole dam issue, which is really complicated. I mean, obviously, the 3 complicating factors here are, number 1, toxins in the water, the supply of salmon, which is related to the dams, and then ultimately the noise in those areas, those waters, and quieting them. And the one area where there's been some significant processes in quieting the waters, and the last 3 years, and they seem to get a little healthier. They got some calves, they got some newborns, which is great news, and fingers crossed. And in particular, that there are, I think it's about 9. There are 9 newborns, but 6 are female, which is big, which is really important. So fingers crossed that maybe after really dropping, and it's to a scary level, that maybe there's hope, that at least if you quiet the waters, allow them to hunt for the salmon that are there, then it buys time to deal with the more complicated and longer term issues of dam removal, salmon supply, and toxins in the water. So
there's going to be a documentary, or there's a documentary being worked on currently, actually, with John Carlos Frey. And I know he was up in Lummi last week, and he's with some folks today, actually, up there looking at some of the other models of dam removal. So we want to keep our eyes open for that too. That got fully funded by an anonymous donor who just came in and funded the majority, the very big majority of that GoFundMe that was there. I think they had raised like 30,000, something like that, and someone came in and anonymously donated $470,000. So that documentary project is underway, and we'll have John Carlos Frey back on with us here in a few weeks. He had we don't have it set yet, but he did say he would come on and keep us posted as he's going through this. So we look forward to that. And Antonio, that's something you'll probably want to check out too. I mean, I think there's just a lot of work being done that we have to continue to do and not get tired of doing. And I will be the first to admit, I don't write every single day. And I should. And so, I don't know, we come up with like a week schedule or something. Like on Monday, you send this email, and on Tuesday you send off this letter, because we all know how good I am about going to the post office. But just yeah, Christina's laughing.
Post office? What's a post office?
I know, right? But I mean, just an action a day, it's not too much. Just take an action a day. It's just, even if it's just one a day. I mean, I know there's folks who are taking like 5 actions a day. We really appreciate you guys, by the way, who are doing that. But even if it's just one,
You know,
And also, you don't have to go to the post office if you're just writing a letter. You can just put a
yeah,
stamp
I
on
know.
it.
I gotta go get.
Gotta put the flag up.
Leave me alone, Antonio. You were saying.
yeah, look, there was the earlier question about, what you can do too. And the other thing is, when we're talking about politics, is, money talks in politics. And there were people with deep pockets that were willing to help fund TokiTV's repatriation back to the Pacific Northwest. And if anybody's got contacts with them, get them back into the game here and into the political game. There's still 5 other orcas at SeaWorld. And if some deep pocket types could come into the game, that propels forward. Yes, it's a relationship business, but it's also a money business. Politics is.
For sure.
I have a question for you about something you spoke about quite earlier on in the show, and that was like changing the viewpoint of people and how you see that changing. And a lot of people are now like, okay, this is not okay with us. We don't want to see these large, majestic animals, in bathtubs or tiny cages or whatever it is. And then you said, so now what? And so that's like a huge question, especially for the killer whales, because they're so large, right? So like that is a really huge, so now what? Like, okay, we have the mass agreement that it's not okay. So we need to have like a bunch of sanctuaries. I mean, basically, because otherwise, I mean, I just thought that was a really good question. Like, now what?
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
Go.
And I think, I think even though TokiTV's story did not end the way, like I said, that I think everybody here wanted, the fact that there was a plan was a watershed. That broke the dam, so to speak. Because that was the inertia. It was, okay, yeah, I think this is terrible, but what are you going to do? Yeah, I think this is terrible, but no, there was a plan. And that's why I think if those folks can be re-engaged, if the Friends of TokiTV that were behind this plan to move her to a sanctuary, if they could be brought back into the game, back into the fore. And then when you walk into a lawmaker's office and say, listen, here's the, assuming the Animal Legal Defense Fund comes back with their legislation to require the freeing of these captive orcas, if basically the answer is the lawmaker says, well, yeah, but then what? Okay, well, here's a plan. This is what the plan is, and there's some money behind that. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. So I think it's the now what question is, yes, you're absolutely, you got to start. That alternative needs to be there. And then there needs to be folks with some deep pockets, some money, who can write some checks to help fund, if it's going to be a constitutional amendment, fund the political campaign, the petition drive to get it on the ballot. And ultimately, I think that's, if you're going to align all the planets, I think that hurdle, that challenge becomes much more surmountable.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Antonio. That's for sure. And I think the people who were involved are involved. I mean, everyone's hearts were in the right place, obviously, to step in to do something like this and to step in and make a difference and to step in and help. And just, so I don't think anyone, and I don't know how anyone could be out of the game, but there is, you talk about lining it up. And I think that there are a lot of folks who were still willing and able and wanting to make a difference. And you're right, they have to have somewhere for them to go. So let's support those that are making progress in sanctuaries, and keep getting the word out, and keep, again, fight for something, not against. And because these animals need somewhere to go. They need somewhere to go.
Maybe we need a new hashtag where we can make all these actions and then hashtag it to where we can tag these people with a lot of money and power and you know, maybe another like watch Blackfish was, remember what Blackfish did, and then Rick O'Berry, don't buy a ticket. Maybe we need another hashtag to keep this pushing because everything's so, you know, on social medias. So
there's a lot of
something really awesome that would not come across as fighting them,
Right.
but working with them. Because if you push against that cognitive disconnect, they're just going to dig their feet in. So maybe something really compassionate, like she was. Just a thought.
No, it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I think that there's some media going to be coming out. We all know there's a couple of documentaries that were being worked on. I think there's going to be another shift, like we're talking about, you know, a different view. And it's a lot of the younger people. We talk about this all the time. It's education, right? What they're doing in the schools, Christine Lawrence and, you know, Mary Ward and all these people making a massive difference with our youth. The youth don't want to go, you know, and this is not entertaining for them. And so the industry, I think if there were somewhere to go where they can still be and look like the heroes, maybe they will, you know, maybe
Yeah.
they
And the other thing I would throw out there, okay, and this putting on my historian hat, is the axiom in politics from the beginning of the Cold War, where they're trying to rile up and get a lot of votes for the creation of the CIA and a lot of the Cold War infrastructure. And one of Harry Truman's advisors told him, "Look, if you really want to get something done, you got to scare the hell out of people." And to scare the hell out of people, here in the state of Florida, is tourism. You know, that image when TokiTV died, of that crane lifting her out. I mean, that's no longer, that was no longer theory. That was reality. And I think that that's what kind of awaits the other captives. And I think that, you know, that's somewhere down the line, and, you know, in a state that is very, very sensitive to its image and to the image of its tourism business, to, you know, say, listen, you know, we have this positive outcome. We have the solution that is positive, but if we don't take it, the consequence, and you show them that image, this is what's going to be repeated around the globe, potentially 5 more times. And you know, so it's kind of like, you know, the idea that you have to put out a positive solution. You have to provide an answer, but also that's a carrot. There's also the stick of, if you don't take the opportunity that there is now, this is what you're facing. This is what Florida tourism, this is what we're going to be known for. You know, not the happiest place on earth, but the one that you keep seeing these horrific images. And I think that's part of the, I think that's another part of this process, is letting them know that there is a positive solution, but there's also very much a very dark consequence as well.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Antonio.
that was kind of a downer, but
No, because but you said it. You're right. There was an end of an era, but it's what did you say? It's
yeah,
beginning.
the end of the era, but not the end of the cause.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that someone posted that. I do think, you know, if they need to look like heroes, that's fine. But golly, just, you know, do what's right,
Right.
you know, and you can still charge people to go look through a telescope kind of thing and see these beautiful, majestic beings in a sanctuary, and it can still be SeaWorld, and it could still be whoever, you know, just make the right choice. Like times are shifting, you know, and become a theme park, you know, I tell you what, man, if SeaWorld puts these animals in sanctuaries, I will go visit that theme park and ride their roller coasters over and over again. And so many people would, just because they did the right thing. And so we'll keep praying for that. And in the meantime, we'll keep writing letters. We'll keep pushing law. We'll keep writing the White House. We'll keep doing everything we can do, but I won't stop praying for that.
No, and Annette, let me tell you, that's actually a really great point. That if they were to move these animals to a sanctuary that was, you know, something that was dignified. The idea that people would go see them, I would go. I would go out, I mean, God knows I go out to, the San Juan Islands with next to no hope of actually seeing that. I still make the trip out there because it's worth it. It's worth the go. It's worth to make the trip out there. And if you're going to go to a place that is kind of a dignified sanctuary and you can actually see them, I mean, that would be that. I mean, to me, it's mind-boggling that they haven't thought about that themselves.
And they will make more money.
Yeah, it's like
They would
more
make
attractive.
Yeah, they would make way more money. They'd have, and they'd just be on the right side of history,
course,
right.
They just would. So I don't know.
I went to Paz one year with my daughter, and I can tell you it was $650 to see an elephant from a distance. And I paid that by 2 for me and my daughter to go see an elephant be an elephant. So yeah, there's a lot of money in doing the right thing.
Can you pay my ticket? Can you pay my ticket?
Well, sure, I'll go back to work and buy you a ticket.
It's something
But you're right.
I've been able to understand. Well, to me, it just seems like, where's your business model going? And for SeaWorld and the likes to just ignore that possibility, which, in my mind, that's what they've done for the last, I don't know how long, 20, 25 years. It doesn't sit well that they're not thinking ahead. They could be the leaders, the world leaders in doing this, and yet they just close it down. And the other thing is that, am I right in saying that going back, was it 2018, 19 that Peter actually bought shares in SeaWorld? And I remember thinking at the time, wonder how many shares they've bought and what difference they're going to make. And there's nothing being reported about it since, which is really disappointing. But I just wondered, is that maybe a way in, the fact that Peter owns shares in SeaWorld?
I do remember that. I don't remember what year that was, but that's an interesting question because I know that was the hope, right? Was to be able to come in to affect change. So
Yeah.
there's avenues, guys, and we just got to keep coming together and putting things out there. And someone with, the relationship business, like you said, I mean, someone who has that relationship, if they haven't heard of it, share it with them.
Yeah.
Someone, an executive at SeaWorld, share that with them if they haven't thought about that, or if they haven't thought about that in the last year, or, things are changing. They're continually changing. I want to thank you, Antonio, for coming on, and I hope you consider coming back on.
Sure.
As we
This is
journey
great.
this Toki's Law with Alejandro, and you're welcome anytime to come hang with us, and even if it's just to come hang out with us, you're welcome to be with us. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invite.
Any final words you want to say before we close?
No, but I will send you the link once I get that story about the Greyhound Amendment, because I do think that there are going to be parallels there. And, you look at your screensaver, the background screen, just think if that were a sanctuary and you had orcas, living in a dignified existence. I mean, I'd be the first one out there.
Yep. Let's do it. We'll share that with you guys. I'm going to close with Alejandro. Is there anything you want to say before we close?
Yeah, if you need Antonio again, you need to contact me first.
Is he your body?
I'm part of his posse. I'm just going along because I want to go to Argentina with him. I want to go down to Argentina with him.
Yeah, let's see. Let's go. If Milei is the next president
Can
of
you show
Argentina.
everyone your hat real quick, Antonio?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I just wanted to point that out. Go Dolphins! Yeah. Dolphins play tonight.
It's been a long time since we've been able.
We're doing good.
Yeah.
We're
Yes,
doing
we are.
really good.
It's been a long time.
Wood you can find. We're doing good. Dee Jones is watching. I'm going to close with the song that Dee wrote and is singing. And Dee, I hope you come on with us very soon so everyone can see the beautiful face in front of that beautiful voice. So you guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.
Thank you very much, and
next Sunday. Thanks for being with us.
great work, everybody, and hang in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio.
Bye, everyone.
Toki, Ulysses, Corky, and the 55 plus orca that's in captivity, this song is dedicated to you. Out on the ocean swimming free, it's where I'm supposed to be. Not living my life in captivity. That kind of life is not for me. Take me home, where I belong. Out on the deep blue sea, swimming up to 100 miles a day with my family. Take me home. You took me away from my family. You took me away from my home, where I'm supposed to roam. You took me away from my home. Take me home, where I belong. Out on the deep blue sea. Not in aquarium, not in captivity. Take me home, where I belong. Out on the deep blue sea, with my family. You took me away from my water that helped me to thrive for my life. You took me away from my family, who loved me and taught me. Take me home. I wanna go. I wanna be free. I wanna be free. Take me home, where I belong. Out on the deep blue sea, swimming up to 100 miles a day with my family. Not in captivity, it's not me. I wanna be free. I wanna be free. I wanna live free. Roaming the ocean, roaming the ocean.